Hi everyone, this is Sonia Kargi and you're welcome to my video presentation on conjoint analysis. This video presentation is based on the course requirement of marketing analytics, which is guided by Professor Eric Riney, and I would like to thank Professor Eric Riney for giving us an opportunity analysis. Conjoint analysis refers to one of the techniques that is used in marketing analytics to determine customer preferences and like to revise the prices, the ingredients, or the features of the existing products. That helps to retain the customers, and also it helps to determine the future pricing strategies and also gain competitive advantage in the market. The purpose and application of conjoint analysis is to identify the product features which is based on the customer preferences. Test concepts, it depends on evaluating the product ideas before launching to reduce risk. What happens is sometimes if we do a good customer survey or consumer preference analysis, if we launch products, then there are chances that the company loses the target market competitor. And also determine the price sensitivity and maximum willingness to pay. So, with the use of conjoint analysis, even the companies can make a segmentation of the market based on the preferences and the pricing strategies, so that better decisions are made with a good market analysis. So what are attributes? So for example, there is a soap. So the soap has different ingredients, like there could be lavender, the almond, the milk, the shea butter, or milk balls. And the other attributes could be the colors, like blue, green, red, white, black, and also the price. So in analysis, second, the levels are the variations within each attribute for comparison. So each attribute has a different levels and which vary from each others, like mint vary from lavender in the ranking as per the preference of the customers. The next is the profile determination. So here is a very good example that will help you understand what does a profile mean. So for example, this is an attribute table for soap. So you can see the fragrance, so these are the attributes of the soap, and these are the profiles that will be created. So the profile would be a multiplication of each of these. So when we multiply each of these, that's gonna create the number of profile. It's like creating a matrix which includes each of the different product features. Utility is a numerical value where each features of a soap or a product is determined and within a range, and the customers, they actually select and make their preference. That's how we know the strength of any ingredient or any feature of a product and define. So this is the table that determines the utility and preference analysis. So the analysis, the numerical wells. So let's talk about the step-by-step process to conduct the conjoint analysis. So first thing first, the data are given to you, and then you have to create the dummy variables, because the data given to you is quantitative and qualitative. So we need only quantitative data, because what we do is like there are different formats that you can use to conduct the conjoint analysis. For example, I have used Excel here because Excel is easier for me to conduct the analysis, and by the use of dummy variables, all we have to do is like do a regression analysis and then determine the preferred rank there. Or you can even use SPSS, where there is a different technique to use SPSS to determine the conjoint analysis. So when you conduct the regression analysis, then you create the regression equation that becomes the base to determine a customer's preferences and qualitative. And then we have to create a utility with its support utility, and which will be explained in the next segment to you. And we have to do the orthogonality test. The orthogonality test, it actually ensures attributes that vary independent for the valid analytical results, where correlation is used based on the Excel formula, and based on the results that are given by regression equation correlation for orthogonality, we're going to come to a conclusion and interpret the results for the data given to us. Disease and the conjoint analysis better. We have a summary of the data of attributes for soap, where we have different attributes on fragrance, ingredients, price, guarantee, and ranking. So we have to quantify this data into dummy variables. So let's move on to the next step, where first thing first, the step 1 is to create dummy variables. And the next step is to determine the preferred score. So the preferred score, we have to use a formula in that. So ranking is determined in this question from 1 to 18. So preferred score is maximum rank plus 1 minus the rank determines the preferred score, and it is actually the opposite of the ranking that was done previously. The highest rank is 1, then the preferred score is the highest score of 8. Because in the question, it has already been stated that rank 1 is the most preferred and rank 18 is the least preferred. So preference score is based on the same we have done here. So our next step is we're gonna do a regression formula on the dummy variables that we have created. So what happens in the regression is that you should not take all of the fragrance that we have, like the 3 non-fragrant, mint or lavender. Only 2 of these attributes are to be taken for the regression analysis. So for the regression formula, like I talked before, we are not using all the variables. We are just using 2 of the variables of fragrance and 2 of the prices only. So do the regression where the y variable is our rank here and the x is all the attributes that we have. So we are taking the confidence level as 95%, and then we are taking this on a new worksheet. Okay, it contains non-numeric data, so I have selected even the labels there. We got our regression statistics, ANOVA, we got different coefficients, p-values. So I've abstracted the regression analysis table into a summary table where I'll be defining the regression solutions which are important for our analysis. So let's talk about what the coefficients and p-value tell about the variables that we have. For example, for mint, the mint coefficient is minus 3.5 and the p-value is very low, that is less than 1. So this determines that mint scent, it has a huge negative impact on the preference. Likewise, let's talk about positive ones. So price is 4.83 with a p-value positive. So the higher the price gives the impression of being more premium, and thus it creates. So what happens here is like the price coefficient is positive and the p-value is going up. It's positive. So this determines that higher price gives the impression of being more premium, and thus it increases the preference. So the summary table is here to determine and to explain more about the conjoint analysis. So these summary that we have generated, the coefficients, p-values here are used as a regression equation that it helps us to determine the predicted rank. Example, we got mint. So mint is minus 3.5, which means that mint has a very negative impact on the preference level. And so I have an interpretation summary here which determines that the regression model is a very good fit. And we have the regression equation here that helps to determine the predicted rank. So this equation is based on the intercepts and all the variables that we used for the regression equation. Examples. So based on our preferences of taking mint as the ingredient and lavender and coconut, and these are different combinations of the attributes that we are given, the preferred rank is calculated as 20.16, and this is the forecast that it's a very high consumer preference. Step is to determine the part worth utility. So we got the coefficients from the regression analysis, and we have mint as negative 3.5. So the part worth utility in this is like people most dislike mint, or lavender is 4.5, so people like lavender strongly. So each coefficient that we have selected here is a part worth utility for that attribute level. Well, for example, the positive part worth increases the preference. For example, lavenders increases the preferences. Negative, like mint, decreases the preferences and utility. So total utility based on this table would be for lavender, cocoa, natural color, price and guarantee is 10.83, which is present as the higher preference because the total utility is highest. But likewise, if we take mint, and then color white, the negative ones, the total utility is negative 12.83. And the next step is to determine the range, how much suppose there's an attribute of fragrance. So what is the maximum and minimum utility? Like in this regression analysis table, the highest is 450, which is 4.5, and the lowest is negative 3.5 rated. So after calculation of range of each attribute, we calculate the relevance importance of each of the attributes that we have, the importance of each of the attributes for the consumer, so that it helps the companies to determine the best features and the best product that meets all of the preferences of the consumers. And the importance is the weight that is calculated based on the formula. The range is divided by the total of all the ranges here, and the importance is 33.80 for fragrance. So among all the attributes, fragrance is important of 33.80%. The least important is the guarantee, whether yes or no. Customers don't even consider much for the guarantee. They are more inclined into fragrance. So based on this analysis, the conclusion is that customer-based preferences is mostly for the soap is the fragrance type and the price, rather than the other color, ingredients, and guarantee, which have the less effect for them. So for orthogonality test, we have to do a correlation of the data that we are given. So we're going to take the data that we have used for regression, where we had used these dummy variables that we created. So this is the correlation analysis that we got using Excel formula correlation in the orthogonality test based on correlation. On solution at the correlation in the given data varies from 1 to 0.5 to 0, where 0 determines its orthogonal, positive 1 is absolute positive correlation, and 0.5 or negative in between is like a negative correlation. So in this data, maximum data or maximum attributes are either 1 or 0, so which actually states that either these data they are too weak to cause any problems when determining different attribute combinations. So the basic key observations from the analysis of correlation here is that mint and lavender exhibit a very small, a negative correlation of 0.5, which implies that occurrence of one is less likely to cause the other's non-occurrent. On the calculation of conjoint analysis, you have to know the data, the attributes that you have given, and you have to use the regression and correlation analysis where the attributes are changed into dummy variables like these, and then you have to do a regression formula. The attributes, it's quantitative and qualitative data, so for a better analysis and use of regression and correlation, one has to create dummy variables for each of the data that is given, and then after running the regression analysis, one has to create the regression equation where each of the attributes are input into the equation, and a preferred rank is determined. At the highest rank, it determines the high consumer preference, and lowest determine low consumer preference. Likewise, in summary, while doing the conjoint analysis, one should know what is the major objective of the organization, what are they trying to analyze for their product, and then whatever the data is given to you, you have to do a regression analysis and a correlation to determine the orthogonality test, and then regression is to determine the regression equation that helps determine the formula or regression equation that helps to determine what's the consumer preference that helps. In conclusion, while doing the conjoint analysis, one should consider the data that they are given, and then know the goal and objective of the company, how the company wants to launch the products. And the data that you have given have different attributes, which is qualitative and quantitative, and do the regression and correlation analysis on the same, and just see how the attributes are correlated to each other, or how the given attributes are highest preferred by the consumers or lowest preferred by the consumers, and how the existence of one attribute affects or helps the other attributes in determining highest consumer preference. This to I want to thank Professor Rainey for giving us an opportunity to create this video. And for more details on conjoint analysis, you can even check out the videos posted by Professor Rainey for more insight on the topic. Thank you so much.